We would be honored if you would join us.
Ho ho ho, and welcome to a festive edition of Film Stories. Merry Christmas, everybody. Whilst Simon, I run the podcast, has been spreading Christmas cheer like there's no tomorrow, the festive cheer has been relatively absent here on the YouTube channel. Never fear though, we have a Christmas delight for you this episode. We're going to have a look at least a part of Scrooged today, at least a couple of elements from the 1988 Richard Donner movie. So like Blade Runner a few episodes ago, I'm not going to attempt to cover all of the film in a slightly shorter YouTube episode like this, because Scrooged is a film that I can happily return to over and over again. Also like Blade Runner, it's a film I adore, not because it's perfect, but precisely because of its imperfections. So maybe next Christmas I'll get to come back and talk about the musical number at the end, or maybe that amazing Lee Majors cameo at the start of the film. But this Christmas, let's look at one of my favourite sequences from the film, when Bill Murray's Frank Cross falls afoul of his very own ghost of Christmas Present, played by Carol Kane. In an old issue from Premiere around the time Richard Donner was making the film, he talks about that scene and says that whilst not particularly difficult to make, it was but that scene and the film were emotionally exhausting for him, in part because of the bunch of actors that he put together was so anarchic. There's stories of Bill Murray, who was leading a film for the first time, really. Everything up until that point that he'd made had been ensemble pieces, and he hadn't really starred in a movie since the success of Ghostbusters 4 years earlier. And he was nervous, according to Donner. He was nervous. Donner's called that Scrooge the film that made Bill Murray an actor. And I think that kind of nervousness at having the responsibility of leading the film showed. Donner said that sometimes he'd take his clothes off and run around on set naked just so he wouldn't and couldn't be filmed. And Carol Kane, who starred opposite him in this scene, according to Donner, was also equally intense, if not in different ways, bursting into tears every 20 minutes, especially if she felt that Donner wasn't fully invested in what she was doing. And, that same level of intensity worked its way into the physicality of her performance as well, where she quite famously tugged on Murray's lip at one point during one scene so hard that she separated his gum line from the interior of his mouth, meaning that he needed to have a couple of days off to heal. It's also incidentally during Murray's scene with Kane's character, where you can see one of Donner's Free South Africa posters that appeared in the background of several of his films from that around that era. But my favourite little film story regarding this scene, though, and what makes it a first YouTube Christmas episode, is apart from the numerous tales of Bill Murray getting beaten up and at one point, according to Donner, literally strung on wires and used as a human piñata by the cast and crew, is when Donner talks about the use of wires in this scene, and this made me smile. There's the lovely little irony when he talks about the entire lengthy process of making the world believe that a man could fly in 1978's Superman, a movie that Donner, of course, directed, and a film that I talked about at length in an earlier episode on the YouTube channel. If you go away and dig into the process of the stunt work for Superman, and especially the flying sequences, the stunt work, the effects work that went into those flying sequences, it gives you an understanding of just how much sheer hard work and talent went into creating that fantasy. I mean, the tagline of the movie when it came out in 1978 was "You'll believe a man can fly." They bet heavily on that effects process. So, and developing that sense of fantasy. So almost a decade later, when Donner came to shoot Carol Kane's Ghost of Christmas Present, as she flew onto, if you remember, it's a deserted soundstage, because of course Frank Cross is a TV executive. Donner this time there was no sweat involved. He thought this would be a piece of cake because he wanted the audience to see the strings. Whereas with Superman, of course, years earlier, it had been about making those strings invisible. But this time he wanted the audience to see the strings as it would tie in with the TV aesthetic. However, after going to all that trouble in Superman to make those wires seemingly invisible, he thought having show up on camera in Scrooge for Carol Kane would be easy. No, ironically, of course, it was anything but easy, and he actually found the wires ridiculously hard to light. Not a small irony, considering how much effort he'd gone to in recent history to make them disappear. Now this time they simply wouldn't show up at all, no matter how hard he tried to light them. He found it so difficult, in fact, that he was still complaining about it in interviews once the film was out. A small, but inconsequential, but utterly charming little film story that made me smile. that is it. Just a small festive treat for this episode. Merry Christmas all. Thank you so much to those of you that supported the Film Stories project so far, and especially those of you that continue to tune into the YouTube episodes here. It's a fun little journey, and we're going on here. And next year we'll hopefully see it go in some new and interesting directions. Until then, take care, and we'll see you soon for more Film Stories. Please do like and subscribe. You can find us on Twitter at Film Stories Pod, at Facebook at Film Stories Online, our website at filmstories.co.uk is now up with trailers and news, as well as links to other film stories, and most excitingly, you can also subscribe to the brand new Film Stories magazine from the website. So do you have a wonderful Christmas, and we'll see you again soon with another film story. Bye bye.